There is one thing I see more clearly the longer I live. Getting rich has never been the hardest part. Keeping wealth is the real challenge. I've met people who earned a fortune in just a few years, then lost everything because of one decision. I've met people who worked steadily, diligently, building their lives brick by brick, and then with one wrong bet, everything disappeared faster than they ever imagined. And if you're watching this video, maybe you also carry a quiet worry inside you. If one day I take a wrong step, will everything I've built collapse? Don't feel ashamed of that fear. It's a natural instinct of responsible adults, people who know they're accountable for their family, their future, and their own life. When I was young, I used to think being smart and hardworking was enough to become wealthy. But life taught me that wealth isn't created only by the things you do right, but also by the mistakes you avoid. Wealth isn't built by skill alone. It's preserved by resilience, by the way you prepare for storms others don't see, by the way you stand firm when life's winds rise. Today, I want to share with you 7 principles that change the way I invest, the way I keep money, and more importantly, the way I live. 7 principles not just for people who want to get rich, but for anyone who wants to stay strong in a world full of uncertainty. And stay until the end, because the 7th principle may change the way you see yourself. So, let's begin. Principle 1, foundation. Protect yourself from the first big mistake. There's a lesson I wish I had understood earlier. Your life is rarely destroyed by dozens of small mistakes. It usually collapses because of one mistake big enough. Let me tell you a story. One quiet evening, the wind tapping softly against the window, I had just received a call from an old friend, someone who used to be full of confidence, decisive, and believed he could never fail. When I answered, the first thing I heard wasn't a greeting. It was silence. A heavy silence, like someone standing at the edge of a cliff. Then he spoke, in the voice of a man who had just lost something irreplaceable. "Jim, I made a mistake I can't fix. Just one. But it was enough to pull everything down. I didn't need to hear more to understand. I'd seen it many times in life. A successful entrepreneur, a hard-working father, a young person confident that risk happens only to others, all shared one thing. They weren't prepared for the moment life decided to truly test them. We like to think people fail because they do many things wrong, but the truth is harsher. They fail because of one decision too big, and they weren't strong enough to endure it. Where do big mistakes come from? Not from lack of intelligence, not from lack of knowledge, but from confidence that exceeds reality. When things go well, we think they will stay that way forever. When assets grow, we believe they'll keep growing. When our career is strong, we think nothing can shake us. But life always has a way of reminding us it's the one holding the steering wheel. I once told a young student, not everything right will make you rich, but one big wrong decision can make you lose everything. You can do things right 99 times, but one reckless moment, one moment without limits, one moment where you think, I can't be wrong, is enough to collapse everything behind you. So the first principle of sustainable wealth is not find better opportunities. It's making sure your life can't be destroyed by a single mistake, not to make you timid, but to make you wise enough to stay in the game as long as possible. Imagine a powerful storm in a valley. When wind rises, the tallest trees are often the first to break. But the trees with deep roots, though shorter, stand the longest. People are the same. Wealth is the same. What keeps you standing isn't how often you're right, but your ability to keep one wrong moment from wiping everything out. I've seen people spend 30 years building their life, then lose it all in a few months. I've also seen people who weren't that smart or impressive, but they never put themselves in a position where they could lose everything. And in the end, they're the ones who go the distance. What's the difference? One lives on the hope that they'll always be right. The other lives with the discipline to avoid destruction when they're wrong. You don't need to be a genius to get wealthy, but you do need to be aware enough to protect yourself from your own mistakes. This is the foundation of the 7 principles. If you're not solid on this one, everything after is just building a house on sand. And when you understand this principle deeply, you start living slower, seeing farther, and staying away from choices that could ruin your life in a single moment. You don't need to win every battle. You just need to avoid the battle that takes you out of the game. That is the foundation of durable wealth. Principle 2, the law of controlled exposure. There's a truth I see more clearly the more I observe people. Most don't fail because they choose the wrong opportunity, but because they expose themselves to risks beyond what they can withstand. We often hear people praise courage, boldness, going big, but few talk about limits, the thing that actually protects your life. I remember the first time I met a man who had lost his entire fortune in one project. He sat across from me, his hands still trembling, as if the shock hadn't let go of him. He said, "Jim, I should have stopped. I should have kept something aside, but everything looked so good. I thought I just needed one more bet." And I told him as gently as I could, "You weren't wrong for seeing the opportunity. You were wrong for putting yourself in a position where you couldn't afford to be wrong." That is the essence of controlled exposure. You have the right to enter risky territory, but you must never expose your entire life to it. No one can avoid risk. No one can avoid uncertainty, but you can absolutely limit the impact of failure on your life. Imagine you're standing near a fire. You bring your hand close, you feel the heat, you understand its power, but you don't put your entire arm in, and you certainly don't step inside. That is the line between the wise and the reckless. You can invest. You can start a new project. You can expand your business. You can pursue something big. But you must always keep a part of your life safe behind you, where the fire can't reach. People often misunderstand this. They think limits mean fear. But limits are the wisdom of someone who knows they are not invincible. Years ago, I heard a mountain climber say something I never forgot. "I don't climb to challenge life. I climb to understand my limits and not cross them." Wealth is like climbing a mountain. Every step upward requires courage. But every step you hold your ground requires humility, knowing where the line is and not crossing it. You don't need to avoid risk. You just need to adjust your exposure. You can afford to lose 10%, but not 90%. You can handle a small slip, but not a free fall. You can live with a mistake, but not with a mistake that erases your ability to recover. This principle isn't for the timid. It's for those who want to go the distance. I once told a group of students, if you put everything into one opportunity, you're not investing. You're gambling your life on luck. Truly wealthy people never need to be right 100%. They just need to make sure that whenever they're wrong, they still have enough to stand up again. That's why smart people fail and ordinary people go far. Not because ordinary people are better, but because they know how to set limits. They take steady steps. They test small pieces at a time. They expose themselves only to what they can bear. They never let a mistake exceed their ability to heal. And over the years, that persistence creates the biggest difference. Remember this, you don't need huge victories to get rich. You just need to avoid catastrophic failure. Whenever you face a new opportunity, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, if I'm wrong, what's the worst that could happen? 2, can I endure that level of loss? If the answer to the second question is no, then it's not an opportunity. It's a trap disguised as a dream. You can join the game, but always keep a part of yourself outside safe, ready to save you if things go wrong. That is the law of controlled exposure. Don't avoid risk, just limit its destructive power. Don't close the door to opportunity, just don't open the door for anything that could destroy your future. And this principle leads to the next one, the principle that creates calmness, clarity, and the ability to survive any storm. Principle 3, the power of liquidity and calm. There's something I didn't fully understand years ago, and most people don't either. Cash is not just money, it is calm. The day you run out of cash, you don't just lose the ability to pay, you lose the ability to think clearly. I've seen very intelligent entrepreneurs panic when they were out of liquidity. I've seen experienced investors make terrible decisions simply because they needed money right now. And I've seen ordinary people get swallowed by fear, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they didn't have a buffer to wait. You can own millions in assets, But if you can't access any of it when you need to, you're still living with the pressure of someone who has nothing. I remember a man who told me during an economic crisis, "Jim, I'm not afraid of the market dropping. I'm afraid I don't have enough cash to wait for it to rise again." See, fear doesn't come from volatility. Fear comes from having no options. Lack of liquidity pushes you into a corner where every decision becomes choose the least terrible option. You're forced to sell assets at the worst time. You have to borrow with painful terms. You must accept things you would never have agreed to before. I once saw that same man sell quality assets to save a losing investment simply because he didn't have the cash to endure. In the end, he lost both. Not because he was incompetent, not because he wasn't smart, but because he didn't have the ability to wait. Waiting is an asset, and waiting requires liquidity. Imagine a massive storm in a valley. People with shelters are far calmer than those with nowhere to hide. Cash is your shelter when markets storm. You don't need it every day. But when the winds shift, when the sky darkens, when everyone is panicking, you can sit there and say, "I'm fine, I have time." Do you know what happens to someone with time? They don't need to sell in a hurry. They don't need to run with the crowd. They don't make emotional decisions. They don't destroy their future just to survive the week. Calmness is what truly wealthy people possess, and it comes from liquidity. When I was young, Shof, the mentor who changed my life, told me, "Jim, if you want to be financially strong, keep yourself one step ahead of your needs." I asked him why. He smiled and said, "Because surplus creates freedom, and freedom creates wisdom." I didn't fully understand then, but years later I realized he was right. People with extra money see the world completely differently from those with nothing to fall back on. They're more decisive, clearer, calmer. They aren't driven by fear. They aren't forced into things they don't want. Liquidity isn't just a number. It's a state of mind. Think about the moments you were most stressed in life. Weren't they the moments when you felt you had no other choice? That's why this principle matters. Cash gives you choices. Choices give you calm. Calm leads you to the right decisions. Someone once asked me, "Isn't holding a lot of cash wasteful? What if the market rises?" And I answered, "Holding cash has a cost, but losing your calm costs 100 times more. You won't see daily returns from that cash, but you'll feel peace during the storms. And that peace is worth more than any percentage you sacrifice." Remember this well. The wealthy aren't protected by the assets they own. They're protected by the buffer they build for themselves. Liquidity is the buffer. Calm is the strength. And the person with liquidity always has the advantage in crisis and in opportunity. This principle leads to something deeper. If you truly want to build sustainable wealth, you don't just need external protection, you need inner strength. That's why the next principle isn't about money, but about a stream of income that can outlive you. Principle 4, income beyond time. There's a saying I heard very early on, but it took me many years to truly understand. You're not rich because of the money you have. You're rich because the cash flow keeps coming even when you stop. When I was young, I thought financial success meant earning a lot as much as possible. But gradually I realized a truth most people don't want to face. If your income depends on you to keep going, then that's not freedom, it's just a luxurious trap. The better you are, the harder that trap is to recognize. The more you earn, the easier it is for that trap to swallow you whole. I once sat in the office of a man who made over $1 million a year. His house was big, his car was fancy, his bank account was large, but his eyes were always full of pressure. He said, "Jim, if I stop working for just a few months, everything starts to fall apart." I stayed silent because I understood that feeling. It's like standing on a high ladder looking down, knowing you're not allowed to slip. No matter how far you've climbed, you're still not allowed to stop. That's not wealth. That's dependence. The difference between someone truly rich and someone who just looks rich comes down to one thing. The truly rich don't live off today's effort. They live off years of preparation. They understand that income is fragile. Health can change overnight. The market can reverse at any moment. Opportunities can vanish in an hour. So they build a system of flow, something that doesn't need them to wake up every morning to keep running. Income beyond time. Income that doesn't need your strength to be created. Income that continues to exist even when you step aside. I want you to imagine a river. A river doesn't depend on a single drop of water. It flows because it's fed by sources farther away, deeper, wider. Sustainable wealth is just like that river. Someone who relies only on themselves to earn money is like a person who depends on a single well. The deeper the well, the harder it is to draw water. And when it runs dry, your whole life runs dry with it. But the truly rich build many streams. One stream from assets that generate passive income, one stream from dividend-paying stocks, one stream from rental properties, one stream from businesses that operate without them having to directly control them. When one stream temporarily weakens, the others keep flowing. That's why they're calm. That's why they don't fear volatility. That's why they don't panic when the market shakes. Because their finances aren't built on themselves, but on the systems they've built. Shoaff once told me something that completely changed me. Jim, don't build your life around your ability to make money. Build it around the ability of cash flow to exist without you. I remember asking him then, why is that so important? He smiled and answered, because one day you'll want to rest. One day you'll have to prioritize your health over work. One day you'll need to care for your family or need time to reflect. And on those days, the cash flow has to work in your place. I never forgot that. Because it's true for every stage of life. When you're young, it gives you freedom of choice. When you're middle-aged, it helps you survive crises. When you're old, it helps you live with the most natural peace. So how do you build income beyond time? Not by running faster, not by working more, not by grabbing more projects, but by little each year, converting your effort into assets, assets that generate cash flow, assets that earn returns without you staying up at night to guard them, assets that keep working when you can't. Let today's efforts become tomorrow's freedom. Let your energy become a long-lasting flow. Let your work become an asset, not a burden. And when you have streams of income that outlast even you begin to live with a calm very few people ever experience. You no longer fear volatility. You no longer have to keep running. You no longer need to be right in every decision. Because even when you stop, life still flows forward. This principle leads you to a more important step. To truly be sustainable, you must accept that you can be wrong. And that very acceptance will save you from countless unnecessary wounds. Principle 5, assume you're fragile, build resilient. There's a strange habit I've observed for many years. The more successful people become, the more they believe they can't be wrong. And that belief makes them more fragile than any risk out there. I once heard Warren Buffett say something that made me think for a very long time. Overconfidence is the bridge that leads people to decisions they can't come back from. That's true in markets, true in investing, true in careers, and true in life. I remember a man who had been doing very well in business. Every project he touched made money. For 3 straight years, he thought he couldn't be wrong. He was so confident, he ignored clear signals that the market was starting to change. When I asked if he had a backup plan, he just laughed. Jim, everything will be fine. I've been right for years now. 3 months later, everything collapsed. Not because he was stupid, not because he lacked experience, but because he believed in himself too much. He built his life on the assumption, I am surely right. But when life proved otherwise, his fragility was exposed in a painful way. This principle begins with a humble truth. I can be wrong, and I must live as if that can happen at any time. Just one sentence, but it can save an entire life. That's not pessimism. That's the wisdom of those who want to go the distance. When you live assuming you can be wrong, you never put everything into a single prediction. You don't place all your faith in one scenario. You don't let your future depend on a single path. You always reserve part of your life to absorb mistakes. A person who lives like that isn't weak. They're stronger than any shock. Picture an oak tree standing alone in a field. From a distance, it looks solid, powerful, majestic. But its strength doesn't come from its big trunk. Its strength comes from its root system growing silently, spreading in many directions, preparing for storms that can't be predicted. If it only had one root system going one way, a single strong wind could tear it out of the ground. But because it has hundreds of small roots spreading in all directions, even if one set of roots is damaged, the whole tree still stands. That is, assuming fragility, building resilience. You don't know where the wind will come from, so you grow roots in many directions. You don't know when the storm will arrive, so you prepare while the sky is still clear. You don't know where you're wrong, so you spread your future across many scenarios. That's not the strategy of someone insecure. It's the strategy of someone who understands life. I once told a group of students, if you believe you're right, place a small bet. If you believe you could be wrong, place a smart bet. The most fragile people are often the most confident because they've built only one road to walk on. Resilient people are humble because they always prepare exits, detours, and alternatives. Confidence is good. But confidence without backup is a recipe for disaster. None of us knows the future. No one knows tomorrow's market. No one knows what event might occur. No one knows what situation they'll wake up in. We only know one thing. Mistakes happen to everyone, and we must be ready to survive them. That's why the strongest people don't live by the belief that they'll be right. They live by the possibility that they might be wrong. When you live like that, you always have plans, B, C, D. You always have a cushion for fixing mistakes. You don't panic when things reverse. You don't trade your future just to be right in this moment. You don't need to be absolutely right to be sustainable. You just need to avoid being absolutely wrong. Remember this, you don't become resilient by being precise. You become resilient by being prepared. You don't survive because you're smart. You survive because you know you're not perfect. Principle 5 is the red thread through every system of durable wealth. Assume you're fragile, so you have a reason to build resilience stronger than any shock. And that mindset will lead you to the next principle where you prepare for storms before they even form on the horizon. Principle 6, prepare for the storm before the sky darkens. There's a truth life has reminded me of at least 10 times. By the time you see the storm in the sky, it's too late to start reinforcing the roof. Most people react only after trouble hits. They worry after they've lost everything. They learn after they've failed. They scramble for solutions after life has already spun them through a painful cycle. Not because they're incompetent, but because human beings naturally tend to believe that everything will be fine until it no longer is. I remember one afternoon walking through a valley in rainy season. Dark clouds rolled in very slowly enough that people thought the rain was still far away. But just a few minutes later, the sky poured down, and the wind slammed into everything as if it wanted to test every bit of human preparation. I saw a small house on a hillside. The owner had reinforced it before storm season. The roof was firmly weighted. The windows were tightly shielded. The woodshed was full. Food was stocked inside. Flashlights were in the right place. The generator was ready. The storm came suddenly, but the person in that house wasn't surprised. They prepared ahead of time. They didn't panic. They just waited for the storm to pass. Life is the same. People who prepare before the storm live completely differently from those who act only when the sky falls. Years ago, I asked my mentor, Shof, how can I stop being afraid of the unexpected? He simply replied, you can't control the storm, but you can control how solid your house is. That sentence has stayed with me all my life. We don't know when the market will reverse, when our health will decline, when an opportunity will disappear, when a risk will strike, when life will change in a single afternoon, but we always know whether we've prepared or not. And that preparation is what creates each person's resilience. I once heard about a man who lost everything in a few weeks because he didn't have insurance for his business. I know another man who lost his fortune because he had no emergency fund. Another person plunged into crisis because they had only one source of income. And countless others sank deeper into hardship because they lived today as if tomorrow would surely be exactly like today. They all made the same mistake. They prepared for life in good weather and forgot that good weather doesn't last forever. Preparation is not fear. Preparation is responsibility. Responsibility to your future. Responsibility to the people you love. Responsibility to the effort you've already invested. When you prepare early, you don't become a victim of events. You become an observer, calmer, clearer, more proactive. You don't manage risk to avoid all failures. You manage risk to make sure no failure can destroy you. Imagine you're driving down a long forest road. The radio announces a big storm coming tonight. There are two kinds of people. One thinks, maybe the rain won't be that bad, I'll just keep going. And when the sky collapses, they're stuck with no shelter, no light, no fuel. The other thinks, better fill the tank, check the tires, bring a light, and stop at a cabin before dark. The storm arrives, but they're safe. Not because they avoided the storm, but because they didn't underestimate the chance it would come. Which kind of person are you? Which way of living will save you in the long run? Wise people prepare while the sun is still shining. They build an emergency fund when everything is going well. They buy insurance before they need it. They spread risk before risk appears. They make plans when their mind is still clear, not when life is on fire. And as a result, while others panic in the storm, they simply stand still, listen, and wait for it to pass. Calm doesn't come from bravery. It comes from enough preparation. This principle reminds you of a simple but profound lesson. Don't let life force you to prepare when it's already too late. Because life is always fair in a cold way. Those who prepare early earn the right to stay calm. Those who prepare late pay a heavy price. Preparation turns you from reactive to proactive, from fearful to confident, from easily hurt to steady and strong. And this very attitude will lead you to the final principle, the strongest, deepest one, the principle no market can ever destroy. That is emotional resilience. Principle 7, emotional resilience. The type of wealth no market can destroy. There is something I learned very late in life, and I should have understood it much earlier. True wealth doesn't begin in your wallet. It begins in your mind. I've met many people who made a lot of money, but their inner world was more fragile than any market volatility. I've also met people who didn't own many assets, yet had such strong inner resilience that no storm in life could shake them. That's when I realized, wealth is not about what you own. Wealth is about what can break you and what cannot. I remember a winter afternoon on a trip through the Rockies. I saw a small cabin standing quietly at the foot of the mountain. Wind was howling, snow was blocking the path, trees were bending over, but the light inside that cabin was still warm and peaceful. I asked myself, why can such a small house stand firm in a storm this big? Then I understood, not because it was stronger than every other structure in the area, but because the person living inside had prepared their mindset not to fear what was happening outside the door. They had firewood, they had food, they had light, and most importantly, they had calm. The storm cannot hurt a soul that is prepared to stand still. Just as life cannot destroy a heart that knows how not to shatter when everything around it falls apart. We often think anti-fragile means being fearless. But the truth is the complete opposite. The strong are not the ones without fear. The strong are the ones who don't let fear lead them into decisions that destroy their lives. I've seen very wealthy people panic every time the market shakes a little. I've also seen people who aren't very rich, but stay calm through every crisis. The difference is not in their assets. It's in their inner strength. Calm is a kind of asset no one can steal. No market can erase it. No crisis can destroy it. It is the only asset that always appreciates even when everything else is falling. Once I asked an older man who had lived through many crises in his life, "What's your secret? Why are you always so calm?" He answered, "Because I understand that panic never helps. It only makes me make decisions I'll regret forever." He went on, "People are only truly steady when they know they won't self-destruct in a moment of fear." That sentence stayed with me because most losses don't come from the market. They come from human emotions. Fear makes them sell everything. Greed makes them dive into unnecessary risks. Anxiety makes them trade their future just to ease the discomfort of the next 24 hours. You see, the greatest enemy of wealth is not volatility. It is the fear of volatility. What does it mean to be emotionally anti-fragile? It means you can stand still when others are running in chaos. You can think clearly when others' minds are clouded. You can remain calm when the world is shaking. You do not allow panic to decide for you. It is not numbness. It is control. Control over your reactions. Control over your words. Control over your decisions. Control over your ego, the thing most easily triggered when the market turns. An emotionally anti-fragile person doesn't try to predict the future. They just try to keep themselves steady enough so the future can't drown them. Imagine you're walking along a narrow forest path after a storm. Branches are scattered all over. The ground is still wet. The smell of rain is still heavy in the air. Someone in a hurry will easily slip. Someone in panic will want to turn back. But the calm person will observe, choose each step carefully, and then make it through safely without injury. That is emotional resilience. It doesn't help you avoid storms. It helps you pass through them. And here's what I want you to remember deeply. No one becomes poor because of one storm. People become poor because they lose themselves in that storm. You can lose money, lose assets, lose opportunities. But if you keep your calm, you can rebuild it all. Because calm is the root of all recovery. A steady soul turns chaos into opportunity. A stable heart sees things that panic people never see. And when you possess emotional resilience, you are no longer dependent on the market. You no longer fear volatility. You are no longer swept away by the crowd's fear. You become the one who stands firm while the world is shaking. That is true wealth. The kind of wealth nothing can take away. Not the market, not a crisis, not an unexpected event. Only you can lose it, and only you can keep it. If you've come to the end of this journey with me, there's one thing I want you to remember deeply. Sustainable wealth is not a race to become the best. It is the journey to become the steadiest. You don't need to win everywhere. You don't need to predict every shift. You don't need to be right in every decision. You just need to build a system, an inner strength, a character solid enough that no shock can knock you out. The 7 principles we've just walked through are not complex strategies. They are simply ways of living, ways of seeing the world that help you survive long winters and rise stronger after every storm. Because life doesn't reward the fastest. Life rewards the most resilient. The one calm enough not to destroy their future in a moment of panic. The one clear-headed enough not to lose themselves when the world is shaking. The one steady enough to build what matters one step at a time. And if you feel that something in this video resonates with you, know that this is not just philosophy. It is a reminder from life itself to you. You deserve to live a steadier, more peaceful, more free life. Before we close, I have a gentle invitation. If any part of this video made you think, leave a in the comments so I know you're still walking with me. And share, among the 7 principles today, which one do you feel you need to start with right now? I always read every single one of your comments because this community is built from the growth of each one of us. Finally, remember the quote. I always repeat a quote that has stayed with me all my life. Success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. Jim Rohn. See you in the next video. Keep growing. Keep building resilience. Keep becoming the best version of yourself.